In our 125th anniversary year, we're delighted to bring you the exhibition Frederick McCubbin, Whisperings in Wattle, Boughs. This is a very special exhibition that takes as its starting point one of the key works in the gallery's collection, Frederick McCubbin's A Bush Burial, which was acquired in 1900, the first year of collecting for the gallery. In this current exhibition, A Bush Burial is brought into close dialogue with a range of now iconic works by Frederick McCubbin that elaborate his interest in the Australian bush as a setting of beauty and also a setting in which narratives and stories are formed. Works in the exhibition span almost 30 years and illustrate the artist's enduring interest in the unique beauty of the Australian bush and the rich stories that emerge from it. McCubbin credits friend and fellow artist Tom Roberts with introducing him to the natural beauty of the Australian bush and its native flora, as well as its potential for creative interpretation. When they were students at the National Gallery Art School in Melbourne in the early 1880s, they sketched at Studley Park, Kew, where, as McCubbin later recalled, for the first time I got awakened to the beauties of the Australian landscape. In 1886, the pair, along with Louis Abrahams, established an artist camp at a property in Box Hill, a development that is central to the evolution of McCubbin's practice and a pivotal moment in the history of Australian art. Whisperings in Wattle, Boughs brings together some of McCubbin's early Box Hill landscapes, as well as some of his large-scale national narrative paintings, through which he set out to create a truly Australian art. An important thread running through the exhibition are the people and places that McCubbin engaged with, from Box Hill to Blackburn, Hawthorne, areas where he lived, and then of course to the Mount Macedon region, which is where he and his family lived from 1901. And they had a cottage in the Mount Macedon area that they named Fontainebleau, after the French countryside in which a lot of French 19th century painters painted en plein air. In addition to places of significance, one of the important aspects that this exhibition charts is some of the people that were of significance to the artist. And in a number of works we see family members, such as McCubbin's wife Annie. We see friends of the artist, such as the artist Louis Abrahams. And we also see acquaintances of the artist that are engaged in the compositions that McCubbin created. So the Pioneer of 1904 from the National Gallery Victoria collection is the most ambitious and well known of McCubbin's paintings set within the bush surrounding the family's cottage, Fontainebleau. For this painting, McCubbin engaged his wife Annie and local labourer Patrick Watson as models for the pioneering couple. A pioneering narrative unfolds across the triptych, from the arrival of the settlers in the virgin bushland, the clearing of the land and building of a family home, to the final scene in which a descendant visits the pioneer's grave with an established city in the distance, conveying the passing of time. Child in the Bush from the National Gallery of Australia collection was also painted in the Mount Macedon landscape and depicts McCubbin's youngest daughter Kathleen, who was then aged 7 or 8, wandering through the scrubby bushland. The solitary girl within the landscape recalls Lost of 1886 in the National Gallery of Victoria collection. However, in this later work, McCubbin's subject is seemingly at ease within the bush setting, which is presented as a site of unencumbered exploration rather than of potential danger. Just as McCubbin depicts his daughter's comfortable engagement with the landscape, so too did she later recall his ease within the bush setting. As an adult, Kathleen recalled, he used to go and find a secluded spot and put down his camping stool, and he would paint his subjects right there in the bush on the spot. He didn't need to wander far because there were so many paintable subjects right there close to the cottage. In violet and gold, radiant shafts of light illuminate a transition in McCubbin's painting of the bush from a site for national stories to a place in which to wonder on the atmospheric effects of nature. He captured these through a more experimental, expressive application of paint, markedly different from the naturalism or realism of earlier works. Such was his interest in the effects of light across the landscape and across the hours of the day. McCubbin wrote in 1916, "Now faintly tinged with the early morning light, now glorious gold in the afternoon sun, and again softly flushed with the warm afterglow as the twilight awaits the rising of the moon." As its title conveys, Afterglow Summer Evening records both an atmospheric time of day and a season. It was painted at one of the ponds on the expansive McGregor estate, adjacent to the McCubbin property, Fontainebleau, at Mount Macedon. Here, McCubbin depicts the bush as an Arcadian site of tranquility, leisure and inspiration. He draws on art historical precedents of the nude in the landscape, notably Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot's The Bath of Diana, an 1855 painting of the classical myth of Diana, Roman goddess of the hunt. When it was first exhibited in 1912, Afterglow Summer Evening was described in The Age as an idyllic treatment of landscape, one of the rare successes in blending the real with the ideal in landscape. In this work, At the Falling of the Year, 1886, McCubbin focuses in on the immediate environs, concentrating our attention on a small pocket of dense, scrubby bush. So closely are we drawn into the bush setting that two magpies come into view, flying between the slender trunks of the gums. The extension of the tree's limbs beyond the canvas reinforces their grand scale and suggests the envelopment of the artist within the landscape. The title is drawn from A Song of Autumn, a poem by Adam Lindsay Gordon, published in 1870. Where shall we go for our garlands glad at the falling of the year? When the burnt-up banks are yellow and sad, when the boughs are yellow and sere. Where are the old ones that once we had, and when are the new ones near? What shall we do for our garlands glad at the falling of the year? One of the key works in the exhibition is Whisperings in Wattle, Boughs, an 1886 painting that was painted in the Box Hill region. And the title of this work is drawn from a poem by Adam Lindsay Gordon, a late 19th century Australian poet whose works really encapsulated the essence of Australia, the very essence that McCubbin and his contemporaries were seeking to capture through their art. Both the small-scale painting Whisperings in Wattle, Boughs and the title of this exhibition make specific reference to this idea of the narratives, the stories that the bush holds, and these are the very stories that McCubbin sought to depict in his work.